I apologize for the late start of the meeting due to other logistical issues. Thank you very much. So,
thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the press. I want to join the Secretary General in thanking you for attending to this press conference. I also want to thank you for your usual patience. I know that the invitations were not sent to you timelessly, but you have been able to avail yourself. We meet at the time that Zimbabwe is enmeshed into a serious economic crisis. And this economic crisis has been exacerbated by the current volatility and the apparent confusion of the government on how to deal with this current volatility. At one stage, the government banned borrowing from the banks, and in so doing, it acted in a way that was anti-business and that was shocking. We are happy to note, however, that the Reserve Bank has now reversed that very unreasonable policy. So we notice that there is a lot of suffering that our people are going through, and the inflation has gone up. The ability of our people to afford basic commodities has been compromised. Faced with this, the role of the opposition is to put things right. We continue with our call that the answer to Zimbabwe's social, political, and economic conundrum is inclusive, genuine, and unconditional dialogue. We are therefore going to be upping our ante on the issue, on the need for dialogue. These problems are beyond the capacity of one person, one party, and so on. It is to be tackled by all Zimbabweans together. And we therefore are going to be calling, we are going to be increasing our call for national dialogue. And if the government remains slow in its reaction to the call for dialogue, we will have to use other means to make sure that the Zimbabweans are ahead, to make sure that dialogue has to be done, has been done. After the 26 March by-elections, we had our National Council meeting, which made a number of resolutions. One of these resolutions was for the party to embark on a serious restructuring exercise. We have begun that restructuring exercise in order to change our party to be a credible change agent. So all our leaders from the National Standing Committee, National Council, National Executive are going to be involved in the grassroots mobilization. And they have been given a specific time period by the National Council. So we are going to be embarking on a serious recruitment exercise. Already we have started with the youths in Harare, and we are very happy about the level of motivation that is there within the Youth Assembly and the level of dynamism that is there within the organs of the party, including the Women's Assembly. So the women will be doing their mobilization as well. We are going to be having our National Congress. The leadership of the National Directorate, headed by the National Chairperson, Honorable Committee here, is going to advise us tomorrow as to the exact date upon which this Congress will be held. We want to hold a Congress that is credible. We want a Congress that is peaceful and well organized. This Congress is not only going to deal with elections. Yes, there will be election of leadership at that Congress, but there are other issues, two important issues that are going to take place at this Congress. One is the discussion on policy. Now that Zimbabwe is in these economic challenges, it has become more and more important that we deal with the issue of policy. So our department dealing with that policy is now working in full swing, and our Secretary for Policy has been given instructions to move across the country to talk to the people about the policy interventions that they want to see. We are also consulting key stakeholders on the policy interventions. So one of the most important things at this Congress will be policy. Policy designed to make Zimbabwe better. Policy designed to make our people live a better life. So our secretary is going to deal with that. The second issue that is going to be dealt with at Congress is the issue of the restructuring of the organization, by which I mean certain constitutional changes that have to be done. One of these constitutional changes, of course, is the issue, the perennial issue of gender representation, equitable and equal gender representation, youth representation, and so on. While we are still on the issue of gender and youth, we are putting the government on notice to operationalize amendment number 2 insofar as it deals with women representation in council as well as youth representation in parliament. The constitutional amendment was passed in 2001, and certain of the clauses of the constitutional amendment have been operationalized. For example, the clause dealing with the term of office of the judges has been operationalized, and as we speak, Justice Malaba is actually doing his work as Chief Justice. But the same constitutional amendment talks of the representation of the youth in Parliament. So we demand that the 10 youths be sworn into Parliament right away. We also demand that the quota for women in the council be operationalized and they be allowed to take office now. So it's a thing that we will be pushing the government, but also a thing that is going to dominate our discussion at Congress. Of course, there's going to be elections at Congress, and these elections will be done by the members of the MDC. So we are going to start our Congress processes. There are going to be congresses at ward level, district level, then the national, the provincial and the national level. When we get to the provinces, there will be a process of nomination of the candidates. Then we go to the National Congress, the main Congress itself. At this Congress, true to tradition, we are going to be electing one another into office. There is no position that is holy. There is no position that is a no-go area. So we are going to have elections for president. We are going to have elections for vice president, national chairperson, vice national chairperson, etc. And when the time comes, there will be the nominations, internal nominations. After nominations, the candidates are allowed to canvass for support, and they are going to have about a month to do that. Before that thing is opened, it is not proper to start canvassing for support. Right now, we are doing a restructuring so that we have delegates for Congress. So with a month to go to Congress, the prospective candidates will be allowed to canvass for support within the party. The people who are going to vote at this Congress are members of the party and not members of the public. So our campaign will be in-house. So we are going to have that process, and as I said, even the highest office is contestable. We were tasked by the National Council to do some restructuring, reshuffle of leaders of the National Standing Committee. And we had a month of consultations with our people. And the results are as follows. And I need to state here, before I read out the names, I need to state here that the resolution of the National Council was for the president to do reshuffle and not to remove leaders from the leadership organs that they sit in. So you will see that it may be the same faces, but allocated different roles. We looked at a number of issues. The first important issue is the task that we have. The task to strengthen the party. And to strengthen the party in the departments that we thought needed attention. Number two, it is to enable the party to prepare for its internal process, the Congress. Number three, it is to enable the party to be positioned to play a leading role in the issue of dialogue. So our leadership at the top, we have myself as president, then Engineer Mzuri, Senator Mzuri as the first vice president, Senator Chief Ndlovu as the second vice president, Senator Morgan Komichi, national chairperson. We have not seen, we have not reshuffled there. The deputy national chairperson being Major Tsekwa. Secretary General remains Pauline Mpariwa, Honorable Mpariwa, who is also our leader of the opposition in the National Assembly. So she has a national responsibility there. We have elevated Dr. Tapua Mashakada to being the Deputy Secretary General. And he will be responsible for two main issues. The first issue that he will be responsible for is fundraising. As we go towards Congress, he will be responsible for fundraising. He will also have other duties assigned to him by the Secretary General. But one of the duties besides fundraising is to be in charge of logistical arrangements so that we have a smooth Congress. We felt that the Secretary General, being the leader of the opposition, has responsibilities as Secretary General and also in Parliament. So we have put Dr. Mashakada, who is a former Secretary General, to assist Honorable Bariwa. The Treasurer General is Dr. Tichivanani Mavetera. As you can see, Dr. Mavetera and Dr. Mashakada has swapped places. The Secretary General, unlike the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General's position, it doesn't, the Treasurer General's position is not as busy. So Dr. Mavetera, who is a medical doctor, takes over as the Treasurer General until after Congress. He will be deputized by Honorable Brian Dube. Honorable Brian Dube is the current Secretary for Public Accounts within Parliament. The organizing secretary, who was Giftich Manikire, he is now in charge of dialogue and fraternal organizations within the President's office. So the new organizing secretary is Mr. Rhino Mashaya. Mr. Rhino Mashaya was the deputy organizing secretary. He's a young man, he's dynamic, and I think he possesses the positive arrogance for this job. And he will be deputized by two people. The first person is Mr. Benevolence Taisekwa. Mr. Benevolence Taisekwa is the current secretary for the Youth Assembly. So we have put him into organizing. The second deputy organizing secretary is Mr. Dube Mkombe. Mr. Dube Mkombe is from Binga, Matebelele North. So as you can see, we have two deputy organizing secretaries. One will be in charge of the Mashonaland side, or the Mashonaland half of Zimbabwe, as the deputy organizing secretary. And the other one will be responsible for the Midlands and Matebeleland. We are going on a serious restructuring exercise, and these people will oversee the restructuring of the party. The deputy, the secretary for mobilization remains Honorable Tangwara Matimba. He is joined by the deputy secretary for mobilization, Pinero Denga, Honorable Pinero Denga. He is he was the chairperson of Mashonaland East for almost a decade. We have now moved him to mobilization because this is going to be key as the country and the party prepare for the elections of 2020. He is a veteran organizer, and we think that he will add value there. We have a new deputy secretary for information and publicity. The secretary for information and publicity remains Witness Dube. He's not here, he's in Bulawayo today. He will be deputized by Honorable Festus Dumbo. Honorable Festus Dumbo is based in Mashingo in Triangle, and he was a member of parliament. He is a veteran sports administrator and a soccer trainer, actually, a soccer coach. He is also a boxer. So beware, Oko Chimono, I have put a boxer there. So Honorable Dumbu is going to be the deputy spokesperson. You will be given his details. We have the Secretary for Local Government as Faith Msarurwa. She remains there. The Deputy Secretary for Local Government is Spiwe Banda Mchenje. She is the proportional representation MP for Mashonaland East. She is also a veteran. Secretary for Elections remains Mr. Gandhi Mzingwa. He is going to be deputized by two people. The current deputy, Sibusiwe Buda Masara, Honorable, and the Honorable Kalipani Pugen. Because we are going to emphasize on policy, the policy secretary, as well as the gender secretary, are going to be invited to the standing committee as we prepare for Congress. This is because we are going to be sitting every week as the standing committee in order to review the progress in the party restructuring, serious party restructuring. That has nothing to do with Congress. We are also going to be receiving progress on Congress. And we would want the Secretary for Policy to give constant reports to the standing committee about the preparations for the policy paper that must be tabled before Congress. And Dr. Julius Msevenzi is the Secretary for Policy. So he will be invited to the standing committee to give regular updates about the preparations of the policy document. We will also be inviting Secretary for Gender because of our emphasis on gender parity and gender equality. So the Secretary for Gender will also be invited into the Standing Committee for the period that we are going to be going to Congress, and that's Isabel Semango. She is currently the Secretary for Gender in the National Executive. There is a few vacancies that are there. There are people whom we wanted to put, whom we have not consulted at this point in time, or if we have consulted them, they are still to make their minds. I have announced that Deputy Chimanikile is Secretary for Presidential Affairs, responsible for dialogue and fraternal organization. We still have another Secretary for Presidential Affairs, and this is Vincent Changrai. He remains Secretary for Presidential Affairs, responsible for rebranding and communications within the President's office. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the changes that we have made, and I want to emphasize that these changes have been made pending Congress. At Congress, people are free to contest the positions that they want, but right now, for the period that we are in and the agents of the matter, these are the men and women we commend to the nation and to the rest of the party. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the press and information to the media. Now this is the opportunity that you have been waiting for. If you have any questions, any comments, I will pick for at a time so that at least you can
Sorry, Honorable SG, I forgot one important thing. We have also made changes within the Secretariat. And I will not read the directors because that's an internal matter. But there is one director that you will be interacting with, and it is our new director for information and publicity, and he's Mr. Chengetai Guta. He's here with us, and he will interact with you if he has not already done so. He's a journalist like most of you. So I thought we should make that announcement.
Thank you, Honorable President. So I noted you'll be number one. I'll pick your phone. Any other? It's 2. Okay. 3. 4. Okay. Please keep your numbers. Number 1.
Thank you, Honorable. Gibson Nikazino. So I've got 2 questions. The first question, you said you are increasing.
Sorry. Kindly state your name and the media house that you represent.
Thank you, Gibson Nikazino from the Herald.
Please don't ask me a question about whether I'm ashamed or not. Where is my friend? Where is that gentleman? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Gibson Nikazino from the Herald. So I've got 2 questions. You said you are increasing calls for dialogue, and I thought you said we will use other means to make sure Zimbabweans are ahead with dialogue. You say they are going to use other means. So I wanted to find out which other means are you planning to use as the party if dialogue is not working. And then the second question is, at one point you announced your shadow cabinet here. So I wanted to find out from the equivalent of the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, what would you have done better to ensure that Zimbabwe's economy is better according to probably some of the pronouncements would say? What would you think your equivalent would say, or what policy measures do you have as a party that are there to counter what probably obtaining in the economic environment? Thank you.
Okay. My number 2.
Right, my name is Sean Moyo, 263 times. I've got several questions, but I'll start with 3. Firstly, am I forgiven?
Can you limit them to 2?
Difficult, but I'll try. All right, firstly, on the issue of appointments, you are on your way to Congress in about a month's time. So what's the wisdom behind in new appointments when you're already going to elect new leadership? Is that not an attempt respectfully of giving a predetermined outcome, or to put it simply, that a form of election rigging where you put people and then possibly you may be elected to retain a position in your case? And then number 2, you spoke about the economic upheaval currently being handled by government and economy. But we may note that in America right now, inflation has gone up to 8.2%, up from 3% last year. And prices have gone up 30% generally. And this is cascaded down to us since we use the US dollar. So do you think the government is responsible for the current crisis, and how would you address that?
Okay. My number 3 is something here.
Privilege to the news day. My question is on youth quota. So, given that youth in Zimbabwe constitute about 67.7% of 18 million, and we are talking about 10 seats reserved for youth. Do you think you should be demanding more for youth representation?
Thank you. And finally, number 4. Yes.
My name is Kenneth Nyangani from Newsday newspaper. My question to you, President, is that there are reports that you are failing to raise funds to hold your Congress. So I just want to know about that.
Thank you. Honorable President, those were the questions that will be put to you by the 4 people from the media. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. With your indulgence, let me first start with wisdom's question regarding the wisdom of a cabinet, a reshuffle of the leadership ahead of Congress. You will notice that from this reshuffle that we've announced, we have not removed any leader. We have not demoted any leader. And the leaders still remain within the standing committee, and they are actually allowed to contest any position within for any position at Congress. These appointments don't stop them. We are reassigning people as a result of the need that we feel at this point in time. These leaders, as I said, are going to be preparing for a credible Congress, logistically preparing for a credible Congress. And you need to strengthen the Secretary General's department in that regard, so that you have a logistically sound Congress. So what we have done there is to give the Secretary General another resource of a person who has organized a Congress before. You will probably know that Dr. Mashakada was responsible for organizing a number of congresses as Deputy Secretary General. And his experience will be handy in this regard. Number 2, the party was not formed to do Congress. The party has to move. While we are preparing for Congress, we have to do our core duties, which is to devise alternative policy for the benefit of the people of Zimbabwe. Whether we are going to have Congress or not, we will have to do that. We will have to have public meetings. We will have to have restructuring exercise meetings. We will have to have rallies. We will have to have demonstrations should need be. And this doesn't, we don't freeze the party as we go to Congress. The party has to move. And why these men and women, this reshuffle answers to certain critical shortcomings that we have had as a party. And these critical shortcomings were manifested during the by-elections. So it has nothing to do with rigging elections. Rigging elections is where you manipulate the vote. There is no manipulation of the vote at all. This is a reshuffle of the existing members of the National Standing Committee, some of whom may contest positions, including the president. They are not disallowed from contesting by virtue of being appointed. But right now, I want the organizing department to function better than before. And we have appointed 2 people to make sure that the party is restructured. Now, restructuring does not mean preparing for Congress only. We want a presence at ward level, at branch level, We want that. We want to mobilize Zimbabweans. So we don't stop that because there is a Congress. So it has nothing to do with strengthening or weakening anyone. After all, we do not know, I do not know who is going to contest for what. So in doing this exercise, I don't have information about what the ambitions of each individual leaders are. Gibson, the issue, I'm sure you misunderstood me. I said that we are going to intensify our call for dialogue. And we are going to resort to any means necessary to make sure that the government is brought to dialogue. We are saying this because the government has been slow in engaging us in dialogue. And we have seen the results of that inertia on the part of government. The economic life of the Zimbabwean has gone down, has gone for the worse. The currency volatility is worse. The government doesn't seem to be in control. The economic situation of our country is dire. And we have to make sure that the government is made sensitive to the need to deal with this. The shadow cabinet, yes, we have a shadow cabinet minister of finance and economic development. That's Dr. Takua Mashakada. Unfortunately, he's not here to answer the economic question that you have asked. But there are a number of interventions that must be done to make this economy better. One is to reduce the country risk factor. And this is done by making sure that the government sticks to policy and that the investment of those people who want to bring their money is safe. That's one thing. The second thing is to make sure that the government deals with exchange control issues. You know, the inflation right now is being fueled because Zimbabwe is operating about 4 exchange rates that it has. You have the parallel rate, you have the auction rate, you have the retail rate, etc. So we would deal with the issue of the currency separately. Of course, one of the things fueling the currency volatility, the exchange rate volatility, is because of corruption. And this corruption is by the people who are privileged already, people who are abusing their access to credit, their unfair access to credit, to further impoverish this country. And if what the governor of the Reserve Bank said is correct, people are borrowing money from the banks and are putting the money on the parallel market, and they are engaged in currency speculation. Now, these are high-ranking people. These are people that the government knows about. And the government has always said, we will shame them, we will shame them, we will shame them. But the government is not shaming them. We are not interested in these people being shamed. We are interested in these people being arrested because they are economic criminals. They are economic saboteurs. So we want to deal with the issues of inflation. But of course, Dr. Mashakada will give you a detailed interview about what needs to be done. Wisdom, you asked that inflation is now a worldwide phenomenon. So why blame the Zimbabwean government only? It's a very fair question, Wisdom. Yes, there are inflation drivers that the government cannot control. We are feeling the heat of the war in the Ukraine, just like another country. But that is not the only inflation driver in our country. One of the inflation drivers in our country is exchange control. And this is a Zimbabwean phenomenon where there is corruption within the exchange control system. People are taking money, they are speculating, and it's driving inflation. And this is something within the control, within the ability of the Zimbabwean government to deal with. So yes, there are worldwide factors, external factors, exogenous factors, but there are endogenous factors as well, which is our inability to deal with the economic criminals who are exploiting the exchange control and in the process driving inflation. Yes, my young brother, you talked about the youth. The youth are 67% of the population, and they, according to amendment number 2, they are getting only 10 seats in parliament, which 10 seats they have not been given in the, on top of that. I totally agree with you, and I want to address the youth and say, and I do know better than quote from the Cuban hero, Jose Marti. He said, rights are not asked for, they are demanded. They are not freely given, they are taken. So my youth is Zimbabwe, musamirira kukokwa kumichato wenyu. It is something that the youth of Zimbabwe must demand, and the youth of Zimbabwe, if it wants, will have. But what we have been able to do as a parliament is to give them an incremental gain. From 0, we are now at 10 seats. And it's up to the youth to motivate for better representation. Sekuru Nyangani, you are asking about whether the MDC has failed to raise money for the Congress. As the MDC goes to Congress, there will be a lot of falsehoods that will be spread by people who have different agendas. And they will say a lot of things about leaders, and already they have started. Before leaders have told you the positions that they are eyeing at Congress, some are already being given positions. So we are in this season, and we will hear a lot of allegations against leaders. That has become normal. That is something that we are used to. Now, today, your question is a very wide question, and I'm going to resist the temptation of giving you our bank balance. But let me say to you, MDC will hold its Congress, and it has the ability to hold Congress. So the Congress will be held, and this is going to be one of the best Congresses that you have ever witnessed. We are aware that there are certain people who want to import chaos into our Congress, and the meetings are being held by other political parties to try to destabilize our party, to try to destabilize our Congress. We are going to be very prepared for that. It is going to be a very, very smooth Congress. The accreditation is going to be done on time, and there is no foreigner, by which I mean the person who is not supposed to be a delegate and who is not supposed to be at Congress to make it to Congress. So that is why you see we have played around with these leaders in order to make sure that in administering this Congress, the Secretary General is fully assisted. That also goes to the issue of making sure that the funds are there. So we haven't asked anybody for SOS that we are not supposed to ask for. We haven't asked for money that we are not entitled to. So we will be able to hold our Congress. The actual deaths of the Congress, because our Congress is a process system, the chairman is going to sit with this committee. Oh yes, actually the chairperson is telling me that they've actually done the meeting of the election directorate, and they will be reporting to the standing committee regarding the timing of the Congress. No one will be taken by surprise. With a month to go, I will convene the Congress, by which is meant a formal instruction to the Secretary General to issue the notice in terms of our Constitution. And it is after that proclamation that the candidates who wish to contest can canvass for support in a manner that they want, but of course within the certain rules.
All right, I've got a supplementary question, Mr. President. Referring to the current or the past by-election that just went by, the last ones, the 8 ones, which resulted basically because of your recall, besides those that have died. Again, your party was thoroughly beaten with respect. Not a single seat was retained, and not a single polling station that you won, not a ward, but polling station. So again, you announced a very strong leadership, but the numbers at the electorate are not showing. It seems you have a lot of leaders, but not many supporters, as the reflection of the by-election. So what's your comment on that? And what confidence or guarantee do you give to your supporters that your party still has a stake in the national political discourse? And then number 2, on the issue of dialogue. We have a dialogue in the country, I think on 2 occasions, 1987 between ZANU and ZAPU, and ZANU eventually it got its way, and ZAPU was swallowed. 2009 to 2013, there was a GNU, but essentially it functioned for the first 2 or so years. The rest of the years, there was haggling between the 2 parties. So it eventually was not working. There was just pulling apart ZANU this side, opposition that side. So how effective is dialogue at the GNU when you can actually really call for a proper environment for elections and have a proper government? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable President.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Wisdom.
Sean, sorry, Sean.
Sean, okay, Sean. Thank you very much, Sean, for the 2 questions. But let me start with the last. I don't think it's fair to say dialogue has failed to produce any meaningful result in Zimbabwe. Remember, if we go back to 1980, if we go back to 1979, there was a grueling war of liberation. It ended with the dialogue at the Lancaster House. And that dialogue stopped the war, ended the war, and it brought independence. What people then do with the independence, with the newfound space, is a problem of their own. We had a nation that had a golden opportunity to start afresh, led by Robert Mugabe. He basically threw away the chance. And You know, there was that bloodletting in Matabeleland, human rights abuses, corruption, and so on. That is irresponsibility of holding a space that you have been given. It's like just giving you an example of a football game. I give you a through pass, face to face with the keeper. You blow it across the bar, right? That's not my fault. I have created space. I have created an opportunity for you to score. So what dialogue does is that it creates the necessary space which must be used responsibly by the leadership. So you see, 1980, we had independence. 1987, there was bloodletting in Matabeleland. Human rights abuses were happening in Matabeleland. The dialogue ended that. Of course, you then had a situation where one party dominated another party. That's the negative part of it. But the peace that came, the relative peace that came, is a positive development. Then you go to 2008. It is fair to say that during the GNU, the life of the Zimbabwean person went for the better. And in fact, the economy stabilized. There was a relative peace. We actually wrote a constitution. There were certain negative things that happened. That is failure to utilize the political space. And I think that the political parties are wiser now. The MDC, if it was to go into dialogue, knows certain pitfalls that it must not fall into. And by the way, when we talk of dialogue, we are not talking necessarily of a government of national unity. A government of national unity is a byproduct of dialogue. The aim of the MDC is to have dialogue so that we have key social, political, and economic reforms. That is our reason for dialogue. Now, again, wisdom, you always talk in the past tense. The elections that happened on the 26th of March, my brother, that is past tense. It happened and it happened. It does not give anyone an advantage in the future. So what we have learned, and Gary Kasparov, the Russian, is he Russian or
Russian.
Belarusian? Yeah, but he was a chess champion. And he had one philosophy that I want my fellow colleagues within the opposition to always remember. And this is to say, you must always be wary of the burdens of past victory. Because you want something at one point in time, you think you've won everything. So this is a contest that we participated in. We didn't do well. We didn't hide it. We congratulated the winners. We went back to the drawing board. We looked at ourselves squarely in the eye, and we are taking corrective action. We are not a party that cries over spilled milk. And by the way, at this by-election, yes, it was a moral booster on whoever won. But it has done nothing to change the political dynamics within the country. That's an objective fact. So, what we are doing, the interventions you see, are calculated to address the certain weaknesses within the party. And I think we are on a good route. By the way, 26 March, 22% of Zimbabweans who were eligible to vote voted. So it is not a display of popularity at all, or lack of it. It is what is there is that 78% of Zimbabweans, the majority, were apathetic. They were not happy with an election.
Thank you, Honorable President. Thank you again to you, members of the fourth state. This concludes our